All right, let's get right into it. We need to talk about a huge shift in how immigration status is being handled here in the US. And look, if you're on any kind of visa, this is something you absolutely have to pay attention to. Why? Because the consequences for even simple mistakes, just a little bit of carelessness, they've become incredibly severe. And this quote right here, it really says it all. In today's immigration climate, it is not the time to be careless about your immigration status. This comes straight from expert analysis, and it's basically a giant warning sign. You know that old way of thinking where a little delay was, no big deal, something you could fix later? Yeah, that's gone. The rules of the game have totally changed, and getting your head around this new reality isn't just a good idea, it's absolutely essential. Okay, so to really understand what this means on the ground, let's look at a real-world case. And I want to be clear, this isn't some made-up scenario. This is a story about how a totally standard process went off the rails and turned into a massive crisis for a couple. And the whole thing started with just one single, totally preventable delay. So check out this timeline. It really breaks down how this new danger works. You have a fiancé who comes into the US, right? And the couple does exactly what they're supposed to do. They get married within that 90-day window. So far, so good. They nailed the most important part. But, and this is the critical mistake, the part that comes down to carelessness, they didn't file the adjustment of status paperwork before that 90-day clock ran out. And what happened? Just a few months later, the foreign spouse was on the radar of immigration enforcement, facing the very real threat of being removed from the country. And listen, we have to be crystal clear about this. There was nothing else going on here. No criminal record, no other violations, nothing. The only thing that triggered this enforcement action was the fact that their status had lapsed. That's it. This really shows you a direct cause and effect, right? It signals a very deliberate focus on the status violation itself and nothing else. So, that story we just talked about, it's really just a symptom of a much, much bigger change. We need to zoom out a bit and understand the systemic shift that's making situations like that not just more common, but a whole lot more dangerous. Okay, here's the best way to think about it. A real before and after. In the past, overstaying a visa was, it was like getting a bad mark on your permanent record. It would cause you problems down the road, maybe create issues if you tried to re-enter the US years later, but the immediate danger? Pretty low. Well, not anymore. Now, the consequence is immediate. An overstay isn't a future you problem to deal with later. It is a right now crisis, and it comes with a very real, very tangible risk of being detained and put into removal proceedings. And look, this isn't just based on a few stories here and there. This is backed up by actual data. What we're seeing in analyses is a reported spike in something called notices to appear. We're seeing a documented rise in apprehensions. And it all points to this big systemic shift toward using removal as the main enforcement tool. The takeaway here is that this is a deliberate strategy, not just a bunch of random one-off cases. Okay. So with all that in mind, let's break down some of the technical terms here. Because honestly, understanding the language is a huge part of understanding the risk. First up, unlawful presence. It sounds complicated, but it just means the time you spend in the country after your authorized stay is over. And like we've been saying, this used to be a problem for later. But now, it's the tripwire. It's the very thing that triggers immediate action. The definition of the term hasn't changed, but what it means in practice, that has changed radically. Next, you have the notice to appear, or NTA. Think of this as the official starting gun for a legal fight to avoid deportation. The moment you get one of these, you are officially in removal proceedings. And the fact that we're reportedly seeing more and more of these being issued for simple status violations, that's the main engine driving this entire enforcement shift. So if we boil it all down, this is the new reality. Plain and simple. The main consequence for an overstay has completely transformed. It went from being a potential problem you might have to deal with years from now
to a clear and present danger of removal starting today.
So what do you do about all this? What's the actual takeaway here? How do you navigate this much higher stakes environment? The answer is pretty straightforward. Being diligent, being on top of your stuff, it's not optional anymore. It's an absolute must. This is basically your new game plan. Step 1, know your status. Know it inside and out, and know that exact expiration date. Step 2, track your deadlines like your life depends on it. Use calendars, set phone alerts, whatever it takes. And step 3, file everything promptly and make sure it's accurate. In this new climate, putting things off is a seriously high-risk move. This isn't just some friendly advice. It's the new protocol you have to follow to avoid a world of trouble. And that brings us right back to where we started. The key thing to understand is that this isn't just some temporary change or a minor blip. According to the expert analysis, we're in a whole new era of immigration enforcement. The system is just operating with a different rulebook now, a different set of priorities. And being careless, it's just not a risk you can afford to take anymore. It's not a viable option. Which really just leaves us with one final thought. For anyone who is trying to navigate the US immigration system right now, that little word, later, it just took on a whole new meaning, a much heavier weight. So given everything we've talked about, the immediate, severe consequences, the question you really have to ask yourself is this: is putting it off until later a risk you can truly afford to take?